One of these voices is actually me, and the other one was generated by artificial intelligence. AI just changed audio forever. One of these voices is actually me, and the other one was generated by artificial intelligence. The voice you just heard wasn't me. At least not technically. It was an AI clone of my voice. And later in this video, I'm going to play 2 recordings for my wife. One will be my real voice, the other will be AI. She has absolutely no idea which one is which. And honestly, neither do I anymore. This video is sponsored by FishAudio. But this isn't going to be another software walkthrough because I don't actually think the interesting part is the software. I think something much bigger is happening, and I don't think creators realize it yet. For years, audio has been one of the most frustrating parts of creating content. If your microphone clipped, you recorded it again. If a truck drove by, you recorded it again. If your narration didn't sound right, you had to record it again. If you wanted your guidebook to become an audiobook, you recorded it again. If you wanted your content in another language, you guessed it, you recorded it again. If you wanted your content in another language, you guessed it, you recorded it again. Audio has always been permanent. Once it was recorded, that was pretty much it. But I don't think that's true anymore. I think audio is becoming something creators can actually build with, not just record. And those are 2 completely different things. Because if AI can genuinely recreate a voice, control emotion, repair bad recordings, generate sound effects, create original character voices, and automate all of that, then audio stops being a one-time recording. It becomes part of your creative workflow. And once I started thinking about it that way, I realized this isn't really a story about AI voices. It's a story about leverage, because every creator eventually runs into the same problem. There's never enough time. Every new piece of content asks for more editing, more recording, more revisions, more assets, more versions, more production, and eventually you hit a ceiling. Not because you run out of ideas, but because you run out of hours. So while I was testing FishAudio, I stopped asking, can this make a realistic voice? And I started asking something completely different. What part of my business still requires me? Simply because the technology didn't exist before. What part of my business still requires me? Because the technology simply didn't exist before. That question led me somewhere I honestly wasn't expecting, because it started with my own voice. I've tested a lot of AI voice generators over the last few years, and almost every single one impressed me for about 30 seconds. Then I'd hear something, a weird pause, an awkward emphasis, a sentence that technically sounded like me, but emotionally sounded like absolutely nobody. And that's the moment where your brain says, yup, that's AI. So when FishAudio asked me to test their platform, I expected more of the same. I cloned my voice, generated a few sentences, put on my headphones, and then I stopped. Not because I thought it was perfect, but because it was the first time I caught myself asking, wait, did I actually record this? And that's a weird feeling, because when you create content for a living, you know your own voice. You know every habit, every pause, every weird way you pronounce certain words. So if I'm second guessing myself, I started wondering what happens when someone else hears it, which is exactly why I'm making my wife take this test later. Because if she can't confidently tell the difference, I think we've crossed into a completely new territory. But cloning my voice actually wasn't the feature that impressed me the most. The feature that changed the way I think about AI voices was something much smaller, and honestly much smarter. It wasn't the voice clone, it was the direction. And I know that sounds like a tiny detail, but I think it's actually the reason most AI voices have always sounded artificial. Think about it. If I gave 2 actors the exact same script, Would they sound identical? Of course not. One might sound excited, the other might sound nervous. One might pause before the important word, the other might rush through it. The words stay the same, the performance changes everything. And that's the part I realized we've been missing. Most text-to-speech tools ask one question: what do you want me to say? FishAudio asks a completely different question: how do you want me to say it? And that changes everything. Because instead of just pasting a paragraph into a voice generator and hoping for the best, you can actually direct the performance. Not with complicated code, not with some weird markup language, just plain English. I can tell it to whisper, to sound exhausted, to laugh, to sigh, to sound embarrassed, confident, excited. Even something really specific like the calm voice of someone who's explained this 1,000 times. This isn't me changing the words, it's me changing the performance. And once I realized that, something clicked. This isn't really text-to-speech anymore. It's closer to directing a voice actor. Listen to this. Normal. I can't believe you actually did that. Now listen again. Same sentence, different direction. I can't believe you actually did that. Now whisper it. I can't believe you actually did that. Now exhausted. I can't believe you actually did that. Now frustrated. I can't believe you actually did that. Nothing changed except how it was delivered, and suddenly the voice starts feeling human. Because that's how people actually communicate. We don't just exchange words, we exchange emotion through the words. That's why sarcasm works. That's why jokes land. That's why stories move us. The words matter, but the delivery carries the meaning. And that's something I didn't expect to appreciate as much as I did. Because I don't just create YouTube videos, I write. A lot. I have guidebooks, PDFs, email sequences, course material, training documents, things I've spent weeks creating, and almost all of them have one thing in common. They're trapped as text. I've always wanted to turn some of those into audiobooks. Not because everyone prefers audio, but because people consume content differently. Some people read, some people listen while driving, some people listen while they're working. Some people never make it through a PDF, but they'll happily finish a 3-hour audiobook or a podcast. The problem was never the idea, the problem was production. Recording an audiobook isn't just reading, it's hours and hours and hours of recording, then editing, then fixing mistakes, then re-recording the sentences you messed up. And if you change one paragraph, you're back in the booth again. Now, I can start thinking differently. Instead of asking, do I have time to record an audiobook? I can ask, should this guide exist as audio? Those are completely different questions, and that's what I kept coming back to. Every feature I've tested so far hasn't made me think, oh, that's cool. It's made me rethink how I create, because once audio stops being the bottleneck, you start seeing opportunities everywhere. My free guides become audiobooks. My course becomes audio lessons. A newsletter becomes a private podcast. A script becomes narration. One piece of content can suddenly live in multiple formats without me having to sit in front of a microphone every single time. But then I started thinking about something else. What if the recording already exists and it's bad? Because that's a problem almost every creator has experienced. And honestly, it's one I know way too well. One of the biggest mistakes I made when I first started creating content was thinking that bad audio meant a bad project. I can't even tell you how many times I'd get back from filming, open Premiere, press play, and immediately realize this video is not gonna work. Not because the story was bad, not because the camera was bad, not because I forgot what I wanted to say, Because somebody walked behind me, a truck drove by, the room echoed, the air conditioner kicked on, or the microphone picked up everything except me. And back then, that usually meant one thing: delete it. Or at least archive it forever. Hours of work gone. Not because of the idea, because of the audio. And honestly, that's pretty heartbreaking. Especially when you're just starting out. Because every shoot costs something. Time, energy, sometimes money, sometimes your emotions, sometimes asking your family to give up part of their weekend, only to throw it away because the recording wasn't clean enough. That's why audio separation immediately stood out to me. The first thing I thought wasn't, oh cool, another AI feature. The first thing I thought was, I wonder how many old projects I could actually save. That's a completely different question. Because if AI can separate my voice from everything happening around it, then suddenly that footage I thought was worthless might not be worthless anymore. Now, I'm not saying every terrible recording is magically fixable. Some recordings are simply too far gone. But if the reason I abandoned something was background noise, today I'd at least try. And I think that's the bigger shift happening here. AI isn't just helping us create new things, it's helping us recover the things that we thought we had already lost. Then I noticed something else. Something I didn't even realize was slowing me down until I saw another feature: sound effects. And before you click away because that sounds incredibly boring, hear me out. When you're editing, you almost never think about sound effects until you actually need one. Then suddenly you're searching through thousands of files. Footsteps, door closes, coffee shops, keyboard typing, rain, explosion, paper, camera shutter, whoosh, click, beep. You're not creating anymore. You're hunting through all of those files, sometimes longer than it would have taken to just keep editing. With FishAudio, instead of scrolling forever, I can literally describe what I want: a quiet office with distant conversation, a futuristic notification sound, a toy spaceship flying across a room, a crowded coffee shop heard from outside. Instead of adapting my edit to whatever sound already exists, I can generate something that fits the story I'm trying to tell. And that might sound like a tiny improvement until you realize those tiny interruptions happen dozens of times during a project. 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, another search, another download, another compromise. Creators don't usually lose time because of one giant problem. We lose it one tiny decision at a time. And those decisions compound. That's also why another feature immediately caught my attention. Not because I need it today, but because I know exactly where I'd use it. Voice design. A while back, I created an animated cartoon for my kids, and one of the biggest challenges wasn't drawing the characters, it wasn't writing the story, it was consistency. Because a character isn't just what they look like, a character is how they sound. Think of all your favorite cartoons. You can immediately recognize their voice from a mile away. If the voice changes every episode, the character changes, and that's why I love this idea. Instead of cloning a real person's voice, you can literally describe the voice you want. Not the actor, the personality. Maybe it's an old pirate who's secretly kind, a nervous robot, a confident superhero, a sleepy dragon, whatever fits your story. Then, once you've created that voice, you can keep using it, episode after episode, project after project. That consistency matters, especially if you're building something long term, because now you're not just generating a voice, you're creating an asset. Something your business owns, something your audience begins recognizing. And the more I kept exploring, the more I realized something. Every feature inside FishAudio solves a different problem, but all of those problems have the same root. They're repetitive. They are things creators have simply accepted. Because we've never had another option. Re-record the audio. Search for another sound effect. Hire another voice actor. Start over. Record it again. And that's where I think AI becomes genuinely useful. Not because it replaces creativity, because it removes repetition. And that's an important distinction because I don't want AI writing my stories. I don't want AI replacing my perspective. I don't want AI becoming me. What I want is fewer hours spent doing work that doesn't actually require creativity, because every hour I save can go back into the part that does. Thinking, experimenting, building, being present with my family, creating better ideas. That's leverage, not replacement. As I keep testing everything, I noticed one final pattern. Every feature inside FishAudio, whether it's voice cloning, emotion tags, audio separation, speech to text, sound effects, or voice design, they're all solving different problems, but they're solving them in the exact same way. They're reducing friction, and I think friction is one of the biggest hidden costs in running a creative business. It's never one massive obstacle, it's death by 1,000 tiny tasks. One more recording, one more edit, one more revision, one more export, one more sound effect, one more version. Eventually your calendar becomes full of work that isn't actually moving the business forward. You're maintaining content instead of creating it. And that's where I think tools like this become genuinely valuable, not because they make creators unnecessary, but because they remove the repetitive work that creativity has always depended on. Something else I appreciate is that FishAudio isn't limited to the website. If you're a developer or you like building your own workflows, everything can be connected through their API. Now, I'm not going to turn this into a coding tutorial because honestly, that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is what happens after it's connected. Imagine finishing a script. Instead of manually opening 5 different tools, a workflow automatically prepares the narration, organizes the files, generates different versions, or creates audio for an audiobook. Maybe it sends everything into another application for review. Maybe it becomes part of an AI agent. Maybe it becomes part of your own internal content system. The API isn't exciting because it's code, and once repetitive work becomes automatic, you get your time back. FishAudio also supports MCP and AI agent workflows, so instead of an AI assistant guessing how FishAudio works, it can actually use the documentation and tools directly inside your workflow. Again, that's probably more exciting if you're a developer than if you're just making YouTube videos, but I think the bigger lesson applies to everyone. Creators don't need to become programmers, we need to become system builders. The creator who wins over the next few years probably isn't the one working the most hours, it's the one removing the most unnecessary work. And that's a very different mindset. Which brings me back to where we started, the voice. Because I told you I wasn't going to test something not with software, which brings me back to where we started, the voice. Because I told you I wasn't going to test something not with software, but with my wife. I gave her 2 recordings. One was my real voice, the other one was generated using my professional voice clone. I didn't tell her which one was which. I didn't give her any hints. I just asked one question. Which one is me? A is gonna be the first one.
Okay.
And then
Like at the eye doctor.
yes.
This
Or this. First or second?
Yeah. Okay.
That one is A.
Okay.
One of these voices is actually me, and the other one was generated by artificial intelligence.
I know the answer.
One of these voices
Do
is
you want me to
actually
tell
me,
the truth?
and the other. Give me a fake answer.
Okay. Okay.
A or B? Let's play it again.
Okay.
Ready? A.
Okay.
One of these voices is actually me. The other one was generated by artificial intelligence.
Okay.
B. One of these voices is actually me, and the other one was generated by artificial intelligence. One of these voices is actually me, and the other one was generated by artificial intelligence. Okay, what is your answer?
Wait, what was the last one?
That was A playing again.
Okay. B sounds like how your finished video sounds,
Right.
but it sounds exactly the same as your voice.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Like
So I wouldn't know that it's AI
based on just like the tonality. And
based on at all. Like it sounds.
nothing. Okay.
Yeah, it sounds like it's you speaking.
Right.
But
since
it's
you understand the EQ and how it actually sounds polished, you can tell that it is more polished.
yeah. But I would just think like I would just think one is finished.
One is edited for the sound, not that it was fake voice.
Right. No, I would think it's you.
Right.
Just finished.
Okay. Well, that's a great answer.
Am I right?
Yeah, it is true. Yes.
Well, no, I would not have known it wasn't you.
Okay.
Truthfully.
Play it one more time so you can see. Just on like tonality.
Okay.
This is AI. One of these voices is actually me, and the other one was generated by artificial intelligence.
That was AI?
That was AI. One of these voices is actually me, and the other one was generated by artificial intelligence.
If I didn't hear the first one, like where I could hear the difference, I would not have.
Right, you wouldn't be able to tell.
Just because I can hear the difference of like the noise, like it's not denoised.
Right. Whether she guessed correctly or whether she didn't, honestly, isn't even the most interesting part anymore. The interesting part is that I felt confident enough to ask the question. A year ago, I wouldn't have, because I already knew the answer. The AI would have been obvious. Today, I'm not so sure. And I think that's a signal that this technology is entering a completely different stage. Not because AI suddenly became creative. It didn't. AI still doesn't have experiences. It doesn't have opinions. It doesn't have stories. It doesn't have a reason to create. People do. What AI is getting better at is creating those ideas further than we can by ourselves. That's a completely different role. And honestly, I'm okay with that because I don't want AI replacing my creativity. I want it replacing the parts of my workflow that never required creativity in the first place. If it can help me recover old footage, turn my guidebook into an audiobook, create consistent voices for characters, generate sound effects that would have taken forever to find, or save me from recording the same paragraph for the 15th time, that's not replacing me. That's giving me more time to do the work that actually matters. Thinking, experimenting, building, creating, and maybe spending a little more time with my family. If you want to try FishAudio for yourself, I'll leave my link below. Play with it, clone your voice, test the emotion controls, generate a few sound effects, or see if one feature solves a problem you've simply accepted for years. You don't have to use everything right away, I know I didn't, but even if one feature saves you hours every month, it'll pay for itself in time alone. For me, the biggest takeaway wasn't that AI can sound human. It was realizing that audio no longer has to be the thing that slows down a creator. For me, the biggest takeaway wasn't that AI can sound human. It was realizing that audio no longer has to be the thing that slows you down. And I think we're only scratching the surface of what's possible. This is Zeus or Daz. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.